I stepped into the will reading and the reaction was immediate. My grey linen dress, faded cardigan and simple flats drew sneers from the room full of polished airs. Their grins were sharp and insincere. A man in a gold tie spoke first, half laughing, half mocking. "Is that the maid?" a young woman whispered to her friend. Probably some sad ex-mistress looking for a payout. I stood at the back, not answering, not flinching, just adjusting my cloth bag strap. To them, I was invisible, an outsider in a room meant for blood, legacy, and status. But they were wrong, I, Lily. Loa was the legal wife of the man whose will they'd gathered to read. And this whole proceeding, it was a test I helped design. Thorn Estate sprawled across a wooded hill, stone walls and iron gates fortressing it from the world. Inside the grand hall reeked of old money-polished oak leather and the faint, cloying scent of roses from vases worth more than most people's rents. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen waterfalls, catching and scattering the April light across 42 relatives, investors, advisors, assistants, all dressed to claim their piece of David Thorne's empire. They milled about, sipping champagne, their condolences as rehearsed as their smiles. I slipped in quietly, my flat silent on the marble floor, and chose a corner window framing the misty hills. My dress was plain loose for movement, grey fabric softened by years of wear. My cardigan, pale blue and worn, hung off one shoulder. My dark hair was in a low bun, a few strands escaping around a face that needed no makeup, high cheekbones, sharp hazel eyes, lips pressed closed. At 36, I was beautiful in a quiet way, a melody you couldn't forget. The gold tie man, Preston. Thorne, David's second cousin, leaned on a mahogany table, his Rolex flashing as he smirked. "Seriously, who let the cleaning staff in?" His voice carried, drawing chuckles from nearby cousins. A crimson-dressed woman, Marissa Preston's sister, tossed her hair. "Maybe she's here to dust the will before it's read." Laughter sharp and brittle. Across the room, Clara, a tech-savvy niece with a TikTok following, nudged her friend Elise, a former CFO assistant. "Bet she's one of his charity cases," Clara whispered loudly enough for me to hear. "Or a forgotten mistress. Look at her bag, lunch bag, chic." Elise snickered, snapping a photo. "This is going on my story. Hat, Thorne will flop." Clara's fingers flew across her phone, her smirk widening as she captioned the photo. "Found David's charity case crashing the will reading. Guess she thinks thrift store chic gets her $1 billion. The crowd laughed, sharing the post. The comments a digital chorus of their disdain. I stood motionless, my gaze flicking to Clara's screen, but I didn't speak. My silence seemed to fuel their glee as if my composure was a challenge. Elise leaned closer, dripping pity. "Poor thing doesn't even know she's a meme now." The laughter swelled, painting me as less than human. My dignity, their target. My fingers tightened on my plain cloth bag. I ignored Clara Elise Preston's taunt, Marissa's barb, and focused on the empty chair where the lawyer would sit. They saw weakness in my silence, not the steel beneath. The crowd noise grew as more arrived. Gerald Hayes, an ex-investor in pinstripes, muttered to his emerald-clad wife, "David always had strays. She's got no business here." His wife sneered at my outfit. "No class, embarrassing the family, just standing there." A distant cousin Trevor in a velvet blazer called out, "Hey, sweetheart, kitchen's that way," and gestured to a side door, his friends applauding. Lillian, an aunt, clucked her tongue. "Someone should escort her out before the lawyer gets here. It's disrespectful." Marissa crimson. Dress, swishing, stalked toward me, heels clicking like a countdown. She stopped inches away, towering over me, her perfume suffocating. "Wrong place, darling," she said loudly, grabbing attention, flicking my cardigan with disdain. "Not a soup kitchen. Leave before you embarrass yourself more." They watched, smirking, whispering, no one intervening. My hands gripped my bag. Marissa's invasion feeling like a violation, her closeness a threat. A cousin muttered, "She's got nerve staying." Their silence condoned her aggression. I didn't move my eyes. Flicking to the corner security camera, its red light blinking. It was live feeding to a private server accessible only to me and one other, not yet. Here. As Grayson prepared to read, Trevor slipped behind me, his blazer brushing the wall, whispering to his friends. "Watch this." He scribbled charity case on a napkin and tucked it into my bag's strap. The room noticed snickers spreading as they pointed at the label on my back. Clara snapped another photo, barely containing her glee, while Elise whispered, "She's a walking joke now." I remained still focused on Grayson, oblivious to their cruelty. Trevor grinned as Lillian muttered, "Serves her right." The prank was a spectacle to humiliate me for daring to exist among them. The lawyer Arthur Grayson entered at 10:00 a.m., grey-suited briefcase heavy with secrets. Older 60-something, his face etched with decades of fortunes and feuds. He silenced the room as he set down his case, opened it, and produced a sealed envelope. No preamble, no flourish. He adjusted his glasses, his gaze flicking over us, lingering a moment on me, unsettling. Preston, who frowned and whispered to Marissa, "What's that about?" Gerald Hayes stood, his pinstripes creasing, and pointed at me, his voice booming like a judge. "This woman's a fraud. David would never allow her near his estate. She's here to scam us." Agreement buzzed through the room, heads nodding, eyes narrowing at me as if I were a court thief. His wife, her emeralds flashing, added, "She probably has a fake ID in that rag of a bag." The accusation hung heavy, turning me into a criminal. Their judgment pressed down, each word a lash. Their murmurs grew louder. Their outrage a performance, my silence only fueled their need to tear me apart. Grayson cleared his throat. "We're here to read David Alexander Thorne's last will and testament executed 3 years ago and verified." Murmurs rippled. 3 years. David vanished 6 months ago. His jet lost over the Pacific. No wreckage, no body, just a void that fed headlines and greed. Most assumed he was dead, most hoped. Preston straightened his tie, smirking again. "Let's get on with it. Who gets the keys to the kingdom?" Clara leaned forward, nails tapping her phone, plotting her victory post. Gerald crossed his arms, muttering about stocks. Lillian clutched her pearls, whispering to Trevor about a nice summer house. I stood still, my bag at my feet, watching Grayson break the seal. The wax crack loud in the silence. They leaned in, breaths, shallow, eyes hungry. This was it, the moment they'd dressed for. Schemed for, flown across continents for David's empire. Tech Patents Real Estate, a biotech firm worth $90 billion was at stake, or so they thought. Grayson unfolded the paper, his voice steady. Each word fell like a stone. "I, David Alexander Thorne of sound mind, declare this my last will, to my family, colleagues, associates. I leave only this truth. Wealth reveals character, not worth." The room froze. Preston's smile faltered. Clara's phone slipped. Gerald's jaw tightened, his wife's emerald suddenly heavy. "Nothing. There's been a mistake," Grayson continued. "All my assets, company, shares, properties, accounts, intellectual rights, I leave to one person. The one who loved me for myself, not my money or status, my wife Lily." A gasp ripped through the room. Heads whipped around. Searching, Preston laughed in disbelief. "Wife, David wasn't married." Marissa's hand flew to her mouth, her crimson nails stark against her paling skin. Clara and Elise exchanged wide-eyed looks. Gerald stood his chair, scraping. "This is absurd. David never mentioned a wife. It's a scam. The will's forged." Lillian grabbed Trevor's arm, voice shrill. "She's not here, is she? Some gold digger stealing what's ours?" Grayson raised a hand. "The will is legal. Signed, notarized, supporting documents. Marriage certificate, photos, letters are available." He opened his briefcase, revealing a photo of younger David, laughing his arm around me in a simple white dress outside a courthouse. The date 7 years ago. The room erupted. Preston slammed the table. Insanity. Who is she? Clara, phone forgotten, shouted. Where is she? Show her, Trevor sneered. Probably some con artist, hiding in Boise. Marissa spat. If she's real. Why isn't she here, ashamed to show her face? I stepped forward, my movement quiet, but deliberate like a turning tide. My flats made no sound, but every eye tracked me as I crossed the room. My cardigan swayed, my linen dress caught the light. I stopped beside Grayson, posture, straight face calm, the cloth bag unassuming on my shoulder. Silence crashed down. Preston's mouth opened and closed, his gold tie suddenly garish. Clara's face burned her earlier photo. A brand on her phone. Gerald sank back. His wife's emeralds dull. Lillian's pearls seemed to choke her. Grayson nodded, a flicker of respect in his eyes, and offered me the folder. Mrs. Thorne. I took it, my fingers steady, and glanced at the photo, a hint of a smile touching my lips. As I remembered that day, then I closed the folder and faced them all. I didn't come for money. I said, my voice clear and low. I came to see who you were, who cared for David the man, not the bank account, who would mourn him, not his fortune. I paused, my gaze sweeping, pinning them. You showed me exactly who you are. Preston's voice was shaky but defiant. You're saying you're his wife. He gestured at my clothes, his laugh forced. David Thorne married to this. No offense, but you look like you shop at thrift stores. I didn't blink. I do. I said David didn't care. He loved me for me, not what I wore or owned. Can any of you say that? Clara snorted. Nice act. I'm not buying it. Proof, not just a photo. Anyone can fake that. Murmurs rippled, emboldening them. Gerald boomed. She's right. We need witnesses, records, something real. Grayson opened his case again, producing documents. Marriage license 7 years old, signed by both parties and witnesses, a nurse, Sarah Ellis, and a librarian, Michael Reed. Letters from David to Lily, verified by handwriting analysis. Bank records of joint accounts kept private at David's request. And he paused, taking out a USB drive, video from their wedding. He inserted it into a laptop, and a wall screen flickered to life. The room held its breath as grainy footage played a courthouse. David and I laughing and kissing, Sarah and Michael clapping. The date matched the certificate. Their defiance crumbled. Marissa trembled with rage. This is a setup. You planned this to make us look bad. You're nobody. David would never... Her words stung, but my face remained calm. I let her anger hang, then spoke, my voice colder, sharper. You're right about one thing. This was planned, not to trick you, but to test you. To see if anyone would ask who I was before mocking me, to see if you'd honor David, not just lust for his wealth. I stepped closer. You all failed. Trevor laughed nervously. Test a game show, you can't be serious. But his voice wavered under my steady gaze. I reached into my bag, pulling out a remote. David isn't dead. I said each word precise. He's alive and has been watching you. I pressed the button. The wall monitor clicked on. There he was in a dimly lit room, David Thorne, 42, lean. Dark hair streaked with grey blue eyes, sharp. He leaned back, calm, judging. The feed was live, the timestamp. Ticking April 15th, 2025, 10:32 a.m. The room exploded in gasps and shouts. Preston staggered, tie askew. Clara dropped her phone, the screen cracking. Gerald's wife clutched his arm, whispering denials. Lillian's pearls snapped. Scattering David's voice filled the room, low and resonant. You thought I was gone, that you could carve up my life. But I've been here watching, listening to every sneer, every lie. His gaze shifted as if seeing me through the camera. She warned me you'd show your true colours. She was right. My lips twitched. Almost a smile, I turned to the stunned crowd. Logan's plane didn't crash. It was a cover to step back to see who was loyal and who would betray him. You all rushed here dressed to claim what wasn't yours. But this wasn't about money, it was about truth. The doors opened and David walked in. Solid, real, his presence a breaking storm. His suit was simple, no tie, his shoes scuffed from travel. The crowd parted their whispers dying. He stopped beside me, his hand finding mine a silent anchor. I looked up, my eyes softening, and he nodded. He faced them, his voice ringing out. Lily, designed this, the will, the reading, the cameras. She wanted to know who you were when you thought no one was watching. Who'd respect a stranger, who'd show kindness, who cared about me, not my bank account. He paused, his gaze sweeping not one of you past, his eyes locked on Preston, the first to mock me, his gold tie. Now a gaudy noose, you called my wife a maid. David said, his voice low and lethal. You laughed while she stood alone, letting you reveal yourselves. Did you think I wouldn't see? Preston shrank his bravado, gone fumbling with his tie as if it could save him. The crowd watched frozen as David stepped closer, towering despite his simple clothes. You're not family, Preston. You're a parasite and I'm done feeding you. A guard appeared, his grip firm. As Preston was led away, his protests drowned in David's words. The room felt lighter, justice palpable. Preston tried to plead. David, come on, we didn't know. She didn't say anything. David's gaze turned cold and final. She shouldn't have had to. You saw a woman you didn't recognize and your first instinct was to tear her down. That's not family. That's not loyalty. Clara stepped forward, desperate. We're sorry. We didn't mean it. Tell her to forgive us, David. Her eyes darted to me, pleading, but my face was stone, my silence louder than any words. David shook his head. It's not about forgiveness, it's about consequences. He nodded to Grayson, who produced another document. An addendum to the will effective immediately. Anyone who insulted Lily today, named in footage logs or accounts, is cut off. No shares, no property, no contact. You're done. Grayson began reading names each like a whip crack. Preston Thorne, Marissa Thorne, Clara Evans, Gerald Hayes, Lillian Ward, Trevor Lang, faces crumpled. Protests rose and died as guards moved in. Preston shouted, "You can't do this, I'm blood." A guard took his arm, firm but calm, leading him out. Marissa followed her crimson dress, trailing her sobs, echoing. Clara clutched her cracked phone, whispering, "This can't be happening." As she was escorted out, David turned to her, his gaze like glass. "You turned my wife into a meme," he said, his voice steady and searing. "Thinking your followers would cheer you on, but lies don't last." Clara, he nodded to Grayson, who tapped his laptop. Clara's phone buzzed violently. Her social media empire was collapsing. Live posts, deleted followers, vanishing sponsors, cutting ties with brutal efficiency. "You're banned from my companies, my properties, my life," David said as a guard escorted her out. Her cracked phone slipping to the floor, the crowd gasped. The room electric with justice. I stood beside David, my silence of victory, as Clara's digital throne crumbled her cruelty, her undoing. Gerald's wife argued, her emeralds flashing, but David cut her off. "You called my wife classless. You don't get to stay." They left, heads bowed. The room thinning as guards cleared out the rest. Lillian's pearls crunched underfoot, a fitting end to her pride. When the doors closed, only a handful remained. 3 who'd been silent, who hadn't sneered or laughed. Sarah Ellis, the nurse from our wedding video, older now, her eyes wet with relief. Michael Reed, the librarian who'd nodded to me quietly when I entered, recognizing me. And Anna, a groundskeeper who'd offered me water before the reading, no questions asked. David turned to them, his voice softer. "You saw her. You didn't judge. That's what family is. He looked at me, his hand finding mine again. You were right about all of it. My gaze lingered on the empty chairs, the spilled champagne, the broken pearls. I didn't want to be right, I said quietly. I wanted them to be better. I faced the three who remained, my eyes warm. Thank you for seeing me. David squeezed my hand, his voice low for me alone. You're more than they'll ever understand. I smiled a small, real smile and leaned into him, my cardigan brushing his sleeve. The room was quiet now, the vultures gone, the truth laid bare. I hadn't needed the money, the estate, the empire. I'd only wanted David alive and whole. And now, stripped of pretense, we stood together unshaken. The April hills glowed green outside and the cameras finally blinked off. Our work was done.